Hey everyone, welcome back. Mark and Ian have just stepped away, so I will be carrying on for a bit. Would like to welcome Fruit. Fruit, thanks for coming on. Um,
So,
so we haven't really got an agenda. It's just been very informal. So it's what you want to talk about. So perhaps maybe start off with just giving a brief overview or introduction of yourself and what it is you do.
so I'm Frootware, uh, as the site says. I'm a university student and a software engineer. I'm also a moderator with the Many Hats Club because party. Um, I don't know. I'm really bad at this. um, I'm largely into I didn't really prepare for this at all. I'm very sorry, but I was kind of thinking like psychology around security because I know I talk a lot about like imposter syndrome. And
Okay.
there is a tweet that I was reminded of recently where I was like, I want to be the Elle Woods of InfoSec. Um, so I don't know.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just really informal. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's great. So are you are you more focused on the kind of mental health aspect, or what attackers think? What kind of side of are you approaching from the in terms of that?
I'm kind of looking at kind of all sorts of angles when I talk about like psychology around security. So I'm kind of like thinking things like imposter syndrome, and I'm thinking about like how we can optimize things involving like users and sysadmins and everything involved with that, like the entire security ecosystem. But also things like how attackers think and how defenders think, and it's just a weird amalgamation of thoughts that don't really make a lot of sense easily. Um, but I'm kind of always thinking about how things are perceived and how things may be looked at. I know recently we've been working on a mini project at work, and they gave me the security research task on how to secure the application. And then my boss read it and he was like, should we be worried? Because you knew exactly how you would go about like attacking us, our clients, and everything. And I'm like, but that's what you need in a security report.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of spot on there. So one of the things I think people don't realize is, especially when it comes to attacking a system, that it's not that those doing it are so geniuses, and that some of them are, not to downplay that, but a lot of the times it's just thinking of a different way. I mean, many of the
yeah.
things I've found is just using the system against itself, like
Mhm.
never intended or thinking about it. So it sounds like you focused on that and applying that. So how can organizations help themselves, try to do more of that so they can help protect themselves?
Um, I'm with that. It's kind of like I know a lot of security. We talk about how we it's a whole other mindset, but really, it's like think about your organizational systems as a bank, and you're a robber trying to get into the vault. Um, like how would you approach everything to get the money? And that's kind of how I started to approach these things when I was starting to think about it. Um, but overall, sorry, I was just picking up my laptop. Um, overall, it's a lot of my mind's disappeared for a second. I'm sorry.
No worries. No worries. Take your
I,
time.
I would think that it's listen to advice that's being given from the industry first of all, um, because a lot of the time the advice that's given by the industry is things that we've seen time and time and time again. Um, and think about like I want to be able to get, for example, like access to the smart metering network so I can take down the infrastructure. How do I go about it? What's the weakest link in the chain? And unfortunately, a lot of the time it's the support center, because those people are underpaid, overworked, and just bloody tired. they're just bloody tired of it all. Like, when I was working in tech support for some low-level government agencies, I knew that some of it was like policy and process where I was like, this isn't on, but I can't do anything about it. Where, for example, I had a user call in saying that they'd forgotten not only their password, but also their username for a system that accessed medical records. And there was no policy in place for me to say no. I had to give it to them. Or at least I had to give the username. We didn't handle the passwords of it.
Right.
And it was just, I was so grateful for the people handling the passwords because they said, I'm not comfortable giving the password if they don't know their username. It's like, I wasn't comfortable either, but I had to. And I was so grateful that that other person kind of agreed that this sounded dodgy.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of scary. I mean, we've heard many stories of the attackers socially engineering, especially the help desk. They're easy target because I guess at the end of the day, the help desk is there to help the user, and how do they know that person is the user?
Yeah, and one thing that I brought up recently on Twitter when talking about like kind of the security ecosystem is a lot of people outside of security and tech view everyone involved with maintaining the IT systems, whether that's security, whether that's sysadmin, whether it's just tech support generally, as, in air quotes, the IT nerds in the basement.
Okay.
They consider them as something separate from what the business does, despite the fact without them, the business probably wouldn't be running anywhere near as efficiently or well. And one thing I always remember is, sorry, not one thing I always remember, another thing I said was like, unfortunately, a lot of users kind of see things like security training as something that detracts, takes away from their job, rather than something that is necessary to secure their job. And I'm seeing like, I'm like watching the chat as well, and I'm seeing people say things like so many policies, so little enforcement. And I think that goes back to things like security has to be convenient or it's never going to be implemented properly.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, or at least I felt this way when I was doing tech support things, a lot of the time people feel like the security policy is there to get in the way.
Yeah, agreed. It's an interesting one, Fruit, because you're absolutely right. Security controls, whether they're technical controls, whether they're policies, processes, or whatever, it's got to be a balance. Because the minute that you introduce a rigid security control into an organization is the minute that the organization tries to work around it. And therein is the risk. So the more difficult you make security for people to adopt and to run with, then the more likely they are realistically to try and abandon it and do something different, which then introduce new risk and your control fails from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there have been times where I've said like, look, this isn't okay. This could potentially be something major, back when I was working with the organization that was contracted to support government people. And I was finding things like, for example, like these 3 users for some reason have their profile set up so you can remote onto their systems without their permission, which doesn't sound good at the best of times. And these were people handling financial stuff.
Do you think a lot of it could also be the why? So, I mean, coming back to the point of where we put rigid controls in, and that's all very good, but then I think, oh, those people are just putting it in just to make my life difficult. And your example, perhaps they don't understand the repercussions of what that actually means.
So the thing with this is these users didn't have access to the Active Directory stuff involved with their profiles. That specific tab in Active Directory wasn't touched by our second line support or anyone who was involved with setting up the profiles. They just had that unticked, and it was 3 users out of, I think, 8,000. And I went to my manager as part of the security policy, like, this looks like something that could be major. This should probably get looked into. And my manager literally turned around and said, oh, well, as long as the systems are working, I don't care.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah. And then there was another time where the same department had reported Trojan in some of the work from home service that they had. And they reported that at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And I found the ticket at 8 a.m. when my shift started. And so I was like, I need to call incident management because that's the process. My manager turned around and said, when did they call you? And I said, they didn't. This is a ticket that got raised with the overnight team. And they were like, and my manager was like, if they didn't call you, you're not raising it. This doesn't go to IM. They need to call. They need to wait until 8 a.m. to call this in. I'm like, yes, because leaving a Trojan unbothered and with unfettered access for 5 hours is an excellent idea.
Yeah.
I ended up watching that ticket like a hawk, and it actually ended up blowing SLA and getting thrown into a team that had no people in it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a shit show. It was a false positive, fortunately, but at the same time, like, these things need to be better managed, and they often aren't.
Agreed. Got a question for you, Fruit, about yourself.
Okay.
Nothing too prying, I promise you.
Okay.
But you know, we've known each other for a couple of years, I think. Now it's coming up for that kind of time, and we've met many times on the conference circuit over the last 18 months. It's fair to say, and we've chatted about your career, and dare I say, there was even potential opportunity for you to have come and worked with me.
Yeah.
That nearly happened.
Nearly happened. So
it
close.
It would have been great, but your circumstances didn't prevent that from happening. So that's fair enough. But now you've uprooted yourself.
Yeah.
And you're now at the kind of other end of the country from where you were previously. And you've planted your feet in a role, and you're cracking on with things. How are you finding it from where you were when we first talked about stuff? How are you finding your life and your personal development? How's that panning out for you?
I mean, I know I was always saying when I was working in the help desk, like, to everyone who like asked me about jobs and careers and things, like, I want something that challenges me. I want something where I actually feel myself learning and growing. I'm bored as shit, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
And this is definitely something that challenges me. I'm not much of a dev, despite being hired as a dev. And so every day I'm kind of like having minor breakdowns in front of IntelliJ.
We all do that, promise you.
Because I don't know how the hell to approach anything, but I'm loving it.
Good.
Because I'm getting to learn and grow. It's something that's challenging me. I'm also walking into work every day thinking this is the day I'm going to get fired, but that's just imposter syndrome.
That's also life working in security, as I think. You're only one data breach away from the door. I think that's
exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But certainly, the more senior you are, I think.
But there's also a point where, if there's no data breaches happening, and that's the case for a very long time, some of the more senior management who may, like, generally within the organization, who may not understand what the need of security is, might turn around and say, well, what's the point in paying these people if nothing's happening?
It's a good, really good point. Somebody, it's a well-known statement in the industry, but somebody that I follow on Twitter has got it as their kind of little bio. And what it says is words to the effect of, security is too much until it's not enough.
Yeah.
And I think that is a difficult barrier to overcome in the enterprise, is that, well, actually what we're mitigating against is things happening. So what we're trying to ensure is that nothing happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your return on investment is a dark entity. It's nothing. But that's good. And that's what we have.
That's what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a person who spoke at the London Lady Hackers Society. Unfortunately, I've forgotten his name. But he did a really, really good talk on risk. Yeah. And he kind of opened it with like very mundane things like, what would you rather hug, the baby or the bear?
Yeah.
And it's things like people die more from like incidents with babies than they do with incidents from bears. Right. But people would be more likely to hug the baby because like risk acceptance.
It's also awareness. So there's like, people aren't aware that probably have more diseases from a baby and a bear,
Yeah.
being mauled by a bear. So I think awareness is also big.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think I mentioned it I can't remember, it might have been with Dave Kennedy earlier. When you're talking about risk at the enterprise level, you're not talking about cross-site scripting. You're not talking about SQL injection and stuff like that. You're not even talking about out-of-date servers that are in your network. You're talking about company closure, and you're talking about job losses and directors going to prison. And that's the kind of language you need to be using in the boardroom when you discuss risk. And then obviously when you delve into the causative factors of the risk, then you're talking about vulnerable software, out-of-date stuff, bad life cycle management. So it's interesting that the different levels of conversation that you need to have within a company when you're talking to an engineer or a software developer or whatever, and then go in the boardroom with the C-suite people, and it's a completely different complexion. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that kind of stems back to an idea that got into my head when I was working help desk still. We always had like people checking over our calls, doing quality. And the quality person came over to my desk once, and I thought I was in trouble for something. And I was like, what have I said on a call that's about to get me fired? And she just kind of crouched down by my desk, and she was like, I just want to say you are really good at breaking things down so that people understand what's going on.
Yeah, awesome.
And it was making me think about it and how that can be applied to like other things within tech. Because it is really a fine line between breaking a concept or an idea down so that it's understood by the person you're talking to without breaking it down so much that they feel that you're patronizing them.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And it's a blog post that I keep thinking about writing and then I never do, about like how to talk tech to non-technical people.
Yeah.
I still need to write that. It's been in my head, like the idea has been in my head for like 2 years. And I just never got around to it.
Yeah, I think that applies to many of us that write blogs. I've got to think about, I don't know, 50 blog posts that are in draft, that have been in draft for that 18 months.
I've had one that was like breaking down everything involving all of the NSA ransomwares. Because that was the year I got into InfoSec. 2017 is when I got into InfoSec, and that all happened. And it's hilarious because it was the first encrypting ransomware that got me into InfoSec in the first place, like considering that this is an actual thing. It's not just something from the brightly colored hackers movie that I have loved my entire life.
Yeah, quite. So you are in fact a child of the marriage of Eternal Blue and Double Pulsar.
I suppose I am. Yeah, yes. I guess that's the case.
One way of looking at it, I suppose.
I mean, the one that really got me into like InfoSec and thinking about it was actually because I had been training as a chef, and I had to leave that because I was getting too anxious in the kitchen. And I was kind of sitting at home, and I was on like a writing community that I'm in, and we were like, it was during the time of CryptoLocker.
Okay.
And the writing community was freaking out about it, and they were like making these huge posts about like what it's doing, what like how to avoid it, like etc. It was huge amounts of information about it being compiled from people like Sophos and my brain's drawn a blank, but I know it's K.
Kaspersky.
That's the bunny. That's the bitch. So like Sophos and Kaspersky, they were pulling things from like the analysis reports from them to kind of discuss what's happening. And everyone I knew was like freaking out, like, oh my God, am I going to get CryptoLocker? Am I going to get CryptoLocker? Am I going to get CryptoLocker? And I was sitting here thinking, cool. Just that. I was just like, this is really cool. And then my dad got hit with it. And he spent 7 or 8 hours, I think it was, decrypting his drives.
Wow.
Because my parents are both like complete tech heads as well. So my dad probably could have done it quicker if I hadn't been bugging him every couple of hours to look at it. Because I was like really curious and really fascinated, and my dad was like, "Go away," and I'm like, "Aw."
It's the way you're going to learn stuff, though, right?
Yeah, like I think that's one thing that I really love about InfoSec is like there's the capacity to be curious. Like I'm working on getting together a malware lab so I can do like a malware of the month, because what I'd love to do is malware analysis and DFIR. As much as I talk about like psychology and security, it's because that's what my brain gets at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I've studied psychology for a while, I've been interested in it for a while, and it's kind of it's the only thing I feel capable of talking about.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Fruit, we're out of time.
Oh no!
No, but that was really, really good. And it's great to see that you're in a good place. I think you've been on a bit of a journey. It's been a fascinating journey. It's had its ups and downs, I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely.
But luckily, it sounds like it's got plenty of ups at the moment. So long may that continue for you. So good luck to you.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and thanks for coming and joining us on the chat. Brilliant.
Yeah,
great. I wasn't expecting it, but here we are. That sounds like the story of my life.
You've been very welcome, and we really enjoyed listening to you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
This is a great thing. I've been like pushing it everywhere I can to try and get the donations up. So we'll see what happens.
We appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Fruit.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.